You ever notice how people walk around acting like their minds are spotless, polished, squeaky, clean little temples of goodness? Like inside their heads there's nothing but sunshine, charity, and maybe a little classical music playing in the background. Meanwhile, the rest of us know the truth. The human brain is basically a basement full of weird boxes we never labeled, stuffed with thoughts we pretend aren't ours. You open the door just a crack and something strange rolls out, and you go, "That's probably not mine. That must have come from the neighbor. I would never think that." Sure you wouldn't. Everybody has those ridiculous thoughts that pop up out of nowhere, those loud, uninvited mental guests who show up like they belong there. You'll be standing in the grocery store looking at a tomato, completely innocent moment, and suddenly your brain goes, "What if you just screamed right now? Why would I do that? Who programmed this thing? Because it wasn't me. I didn't sign any paperwork agreeing to this kind of mental comedy, but the brain loves to do it. You're in a quiet line or a peaceful room, and your mind tries to convince you to commit social suicide for sport. Like it's bored and wants to see what happens. And then you have the other thoughts, the ones you deny so fast. You practically dive on them like you're shielding the world from your own imagination. Someone asks a dumb question, and your brain fires off a reaction so sharp you'd lose your job, your house, and probably a few friends if you said it out loud. But you don't. You smile, nod, and pretend you're thinking something reasonable, something polite, like, "Ah yes, interesting point." You're not. You're thinking, how do you survive daily life? How do you tie shoes without adult supervision? But you lie. We all lie. We pretend we don't go there. It's funny how fast people try to distance themselves from their own mind. Like when someone says, "I can't believe anyone would think that." Really, anyone. You've never had a single weird, chaotic, slightly unsettling thought drift through that pristine brain of yours. Not once. You're the only human being who's immune. You're walking around with a spotless mental browser history. Highly doubtful. If someone did open up your mind like a desk drawer, they'd find old snacks, tangled wires, a manual to a device you don't own, and at least 3 thoughts you'd swear were framed by somebody else. The truth is, the mind isn't dangerous. It's mischievous. It's like a kid who sneaks out at night, not to do anything harmful, but just to rearrange the furniture and watch you fall over it in the morning. It whispers, "Say the thing you're not supposed to say." And you go, "No, that's insanity." And it goes, "Come on, just for fun." You argue with yourself quietly because you don't want anyone knowing you're negotiating with your own brain like it's a stubborn roommate who refuses to take out the trash. Some thoughts are so absurd, so impossible, they're practically comedy sketches acting themselves out inside your skull. You'll spot a sign that says, "Don't push," and your brain goes, "You should push it." You don't even want to. You weren't thinking about that button. You had other plans. But now you're standing there like an idiot having a morality debate with a panel of judges who all sound like you. You start picturing what would happen if you pushed it. People running, alarms going off, some guy yelling your name even though he doesn't know you. And you go, "No, no, no, can't do that." But part of you is laughing because the scene is ridiculous and you know it. And then there are the thoughts that aren't even yours. They're inherited. Things you heard from an uncle, a neighbor, someone who wore too much cologne back in the day. These thoughts float around in your mind like old furniture you never threw out. You'll be in a completely normal situation, and an ancient idea pops up like it's relevant. You think, "Oh no, I didn't mean that. Delete, delete, delete." But the brain doesn't delete, it archives. It saves everything like a nosy librarian. The minute you look away, it files the thought under for later use, just to mess with you, and people act like they never judge anyone in their heads. Sure, right? Because when you're walking down the street and you see someone doing something strange, you know, like wearing socks with sandals or holding a phone 3 inches from their face, you totally react with compassion. You say to yourself, I hope they have a beautiful and fulfilling day. You definitely don't stare and think, what planet did you escape from? No, not you. You're a saint. You're made of pure kindness. Of course, what's really funny is how fast humans pretend to be noble. You can be having a terrible day, you're exhausted, someone bumps into you, and your brain instantly fires the most dramatic thought possible. And then you go, nope, not that, that thought isn't me. Meanwhile, the thought is sitting in the corner like, oh, it's definitely you. But you act like you've been framed, like someone hacked into your mind and planted it there. You're like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have never had that thought before in my life. Yes, you have. You just forgot the last time because you've had thousands. People try to pretend their thoughts are organized, meaningful, even pure. But inside it's a circus, a parade, a full-blown carnival with questionable music, cheap popcorn, and a clown who just won't leave. The clown represents your worst impulses. You didn't hire him. You didn't invite him. But he shows up whenever you're tired or annoyed or trying to sleep. And he starts juggling things you don't want to think about, saying, look how ridiculous you are. And you go, I wish you'd disappear. And he goes, nope, I live here now. And the thing that really ties everyone together is that we all pretend nobody else has these thoughts. But they do. Everyone does. That's why the world works. Because we're all walking around with these secret inner dialogues, and we understand each other more than we admit. The only difference is who's willing to laugh about it, and who's trying so hard to seem perfect, you can practically hear the strain in their smile. The funniest part is that the thoughts don't even mean anything. They're not confessions, they're not plans, they're just random sparks bouncing around inside your skull. Your brain throws out ideas the way kids toss pebbles into a pond, just to see the ripples. Half the time the thought doesn't even reflect you. The other half it does, but only the part of you that shows up late, tells bad jokes, and eats snacks in the dark like a gremlin. And the moment you realize that every person around you is carrying their own little box of weird, embarrassing, unspoken nonsense inside their head, that's the moment you start relaxing. You stop pretending. You stop being shocked by your own imagination, and you start laughing at the ridiculous private theater playing behind your eyes. Because deep down, we don't hide these thoughts because they're dangerous. We hide them because they're honest, and honesty, when you strip away all the polite layers, is always a little strange, a little uncomfortable, and always deeply funny, and that's why you laugh. Because somewhere in there, you recognize yourself. You ever think about how polite people pretend to be, not because they're actually polite, but because the consequences keep them in line? It's amazing how much respect, patience, and kindness in this world is really just fear wearing a nice shirt. People say things like, no, I don't mind, while every muscle in their face is screaming, I absolutely mind, I mind more than anything I've minded all week. But they keep smiling because society says you've got to behave. You've got to be civil as if we're all naturally gentle creatures. No, most of us are just scared of paperwork and legal trouble. But imagine for a second, just a tiny second, that one rule in the giant instruction manual of life suddenly disappeared. Imagine someone walked into the rule factory and said, hey, let's remove that one. The one that keeps everyone pretending to be decent. The one that makes people say, excuse me, even when they don't mean it. The one that makes people wait their turn even though you can see in their eyes they want to leap, frog 6 people, and declare themselves royalty. Suddenly, honesty wouldn't just leak out, it would flood the place. People would become more truthful overnight than they've ever been in their entire lives. Because let's be honest, half of politeness comes from not wanting to get in trouble, and the other half comes from not wanting to look like the kind of person who belongs in trouble. You take that away, and suddenly people start saying what they've been thinking for years. The masks would fall off like they were made of cheap glue. You always knew the guy at work, pretending to be easygoing, was suppressing something volcanic. Yeah, now he'd tell you exactly what he thinks about your quick question that was never quick, and he wouldn't whisper it either. He'd announce it like he's delivering the weather report. Think about the line at the bakery. Right now, everybody stands there, arms crossed, humming quietly, trying to look peaceful and patient. They pretend waiting is a character, building exercise. They act like they've achieved enlightenment because they haven't yelled at the person taking too long to pick a pastry. But if the great cosmic referee stopped blowing the whistle, oh boy, people wouldn't even pretend patience is a virtue. People would cut lines so boldly, with such confidence, you'd think it was a sport. They'd make eye contact while doing it, too. That's the kind of honesty we're talking about. Audacious honesty and arguments, those would be wild. Not explosive, but brutally honest. Imagine 2 people having one of those fake, nice arguments where they say things like, "I see your point," when the only point they see is the one that's making them want to scream. Now they'd say exactly what they feel. "Your idea is terrible. I hate every part of it. And you know what? I know you hate mine too." And the other person would go, "Yes, thank you. Finally someone says it." Conversations would become refreshingly honest in the most chaotic way. People would stop pretending they enjoy things. That's a big one. Right now people sit through events they hate because that's what you're supposed to do. You go to a party you don't want to attend, listen to a story you don't care about, nod politely while someone explains their hobby that sounds like a cry for help. In this new honesty-filled world, you'd walk into a party, look around once, and go, nope, and leave. No explanation, no excuse, just pure, liberated truth, and everyone else would respect it because deep down they've wanted to do the same thing for years. Customer service would become incredible. Not better, just real. Imagine a cashier no longer chained to the corporate script. No more "how's your day going?" unless they actually mean it, which they usually don't. They'd just look at you and say, "What do you want? Let's get this done." And you'd be relieved because that's exactly what you wanted too. No dancing around with fake enthusiasm. No pretending to bond over nothing. Just 2 people doing the transaction with the honesty of a handshake between tired gladiators. Relationships would transform in a way nobody's prepared for. Right now couples have those arguments that start with, "No, I'm not upset," even though everything from their breathing to their posture suggests otherwise. They send those messages like, "It's fine," which is code for "it's absolutely not fine, and you should already know why." But in a world unchecked by consequences, they'd walk in the door and go, "Yes, I'm upset. You know exactly why. Let's not pretend we're in a mystery movie." It sounds chaotic, but honestly, it's cleaner, less emotional laundry to deal with. Even small talk would vanish from the earth. The moment someone tries to say, "So, crazy weather, huh?" the other person would shut them down immediately. "No, we can't keep pretending this is conversation. We both hate this topic. Let's either talk about something real or let's stand in silence like adults." Imagine the freedom, the peace, the silence that would settle across the world like a warm blanket because nobody's pretending anymore. And let's talk about people who currently brag about being spiritual or deeply calm. You know the type? Those folks who claim they meditate 3 hours a day and nothing bothers them. In the honesty revolution, those people would collapse in minutes. You'd see them in traffic yelling at a cloud or losing their minds because someone spelled their name wrong. It would be beautiful. Finally, the curtain pulled back. Finally, we get to see the truth. Everybody is just as irritated, frustrated, and confused as the rest of us. All that inner calm, turns out it was just good lighting and a rehearsed smile. Even friendships would adjust in the best way. Imagine your friend asks, "Do you want to hang out tonight?" And instead of creating a dramatic backstory about why you can't, you just say, "I love you, but no. I want to lie down and do nothing." And your friend says, "That's perfect. I was hoping you'd cancel anyway." Boom. Friendship strengthened. Honesty wins again in the workplace. My God, it would finally make sense. People wouldn't sit through meetings pretending to be interested. You'd see someone raise their hand and say, "This meeting could have been written on a napkin," and everyone would cheer. They'd carry that person out of the room like a hero. Promotions would be based on who's honest enough to say what nobody else wants to admit. That's the funny thing about taking consequences off the table. It doesn't make people cruel. It makes them revealing. All the layers and masks and polite performances we put on fall away. What's left isn't darkness. It's just humanity stripped down to what it actually is. Messy, impatient, weird, needy, funny, and painfully honest. And maybe, just maybe, people would finally see themselves clearly for the first time and laugh. Because deep down, we all know that honesty is the one thing we crave and the one thing we run from. And that's the truth nobody wants to admit. Until they finally do. You ever notice how everyone thinks they're a good person until life gives them the tiniest, most insignificant inconvenience? People walk around believing they're competing in some imaginary moral championship. They really think they're leading the scoreboard, collecting points every time they say please or let someone merge into traffic. They imagine themselves as these noble, enlightened beings floating above the rest of the world. And then someone steps in front of them in a slow, casual way, like they're sightseeing on a sidewalk, and suddenly the halo flies off so fast it leaves a scorch mark on the floor. It's unbelievable how fast the switch flips. One moment someone's preaching patience and kindness, and the next they're muttering under their breath like they've aged 40 years and lost all hope in society. That's the hypocrisy Olympics right there. Nobody trains for it, but everyone participates. It's the only sport where gold medals are given out for pretending to be calm while your entire soul is on fire. You ever meet those people who introduce themselves with, "I'm a very patient person"? No, you're not. Nobody who says that is. That's like someone saying, "I don't gossip." Yes, you do. You're already gossiping just by saying you don't gossip. People love giving themselves titles they never earned. I'm very understanding. Nothing bothers me, sure, until someone chews a little too loud, or breathes slightly off rhythm, or pronounces a word in a way your brain doesn't like. One small sound and suddenly you're having a spiritual crisis in public. Everyone's a saint until they're slightly inconvenienced. That's the real test of character, not how you behave during big moments. Big moments are dramatic. They give you a sense of purpose. People love rising to the occasion. But tell someone their favorite snack is out of stock. Oh, now you see the truth. Their personality melts off like cheap makeup in the sun. They start looking around like the universe personally betrayed them. And then there's the line, cutting situation. Nothing reveals someone's inner darkness faster than watching another human being cut in line. It's not even a big deal. One person steps an inch too far forward, and suddenly everyone behind them turns into courtroom lawyers. They don't say anything, of course. They whisper. They mumble. They do that exaggerated sigh that's basically a whole speech. People pretend they're being polite, when really they're performing indignation like it's theater. They look around for someone else who noticed, making eye contact like they're forming a rebellion, but nobody does anything. All these moral warriors, all these self-proclaimed defenders of justice, and they just stand there, arms crossed, stewing like a pot on low heat. That's the hypocrisy Olympics again. People want the credit for being righteous without actually doing anything courageous. It's amazing. They'll say if someone ever cut in front of me, I'd speak up immediately. But when it happens, they freeze. They become archaeologists studying the floor. Wow, look at that tile grout. Fascinating. They wait for someone else to say something so they can nod in agreement and pretend they were emotionally present the whole time. Even the calmest people crumble when confronted with someone doing something mildly annoying. Someone talks too loudly on the phone. Suddenly the patient one becomes a philosopher of rage. They'll mutter to themselves, "Why do people exist? What went wrong in their upbringing? Who raised this person?" They act like the person is committing a crime, when really they're just telling their aunt about a recipe. And grocery stores. Oh, that's where the hypocrisy truly shines. Everyone claims they're tolerant, but put them behind a slow shopper and watch their spirit leave their body. You see them trying to maintain composure, pretending to browse something on the shelf while staring daggers into the back of the slow person's head. They rehearse angry speeches in their minds like they're preparing for a courtroom drama. But do they ever say anything out loud? No, because they're nice. Remember, they're good people. They're just exploding silently from the inside. Humans cannot handle minor delays. That's where the truth leaks out. Someone says, "I'm easygoing," but you let their friend show up 10 minutes late and suddenly they become a timekeeping expert with opinions about responsibility and respect and society's downfall. If there were an award for pretending to be relaxed while internally writing a manifesto, humans would win it every year. And don't even get me started on traffic. Traffic is the ultimate reveal of human hypocrisy. Everyone thinks they're a reasonable driver. They think they're considerate, aware, mature, and then someone changes lanes without signaling. That's it. That's the moment the good person costume unzips and the real creature inside emerges. Suddenly they're lecturing the empty air, giving speeches to nobody, using hand gestures no one can see. They're shaking their head like they've just witnessed the collapse of human civilization. But then, this is the best part, they do the exact same thing 5 minutes later. No signal, no hesitation, and they justify it. Well, I needed to get over. It made sense. That was different. Yes, because you did it. People judge others with standards they would never apply to themselves. They say things like, "I can't stand rude people," then walk through a door and let it slam shut behind them because they're too busy thinking about lunch. You ever see someone act offended at someone else's behavior when they've done worse 10 times that week? That's everyday human life. Everyone is the hero of their own story, even when they're clearly the villain in someone else's. What makes all of it so funny is that none of us are actually bad. We're just inconsistent. We think we're noble until someone tests the wrong part of our personality. Then our inner goblin shows up, waving its arms, and we try to shove it back in like, "Not now, people are looking." But it's too late. It's out, everyone saw it, and then we pretend it didn't happen. And maybe that's why we all laugh at each other, because deep down we know everyone's pretending. Everyone acts like they're composed, wise, patient, calm, understanding, until real life gives them a tiny poke. Then they crumble like stale bread. But even with all the pretending and all the hypocrisy, the truth is simple. Everybody's doing the best they can with the mess inside their head. And sometimes the funniest part of being human is realizing how quickly we drop the act the second reality bumps into us.